day, dude, I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas. Welcome back to another episode of the pod. And the ladies.
Can't forget the ladies.
And the ladies. I almost forgot y'all. That's messed up. So we have already had a pod, Jay. We've already had a pod where Cody and I talked about just the baseball side of the Athletics possibly coming to Vegas here, right? But man, I've been seeing in the market, like the baseball world, all the fans, the emotions, all these other things. And I think there's a clear disconnect of understanding business. And let's just also too, I don't know the statistics of that though, is how many people, remember we looked up like how many people will ever be like business owners, like in the world. Do you like remember that stat off the top of your head?
I don't.
Business?
I think it was, we called it what, less than 5%?
Yeah. People, I'm going to Google it as we're doing it. People that will be business owners.
You can invest in a fact checker.
Yeah. So, I'll have to, I'm going to do this but the reason I'm looking this up is this is an important piece. Like if you never have owned a business, never thought in the business realm and you're just a consumer, there's a lot of things that will not make sense when businesses pull certain things. It's like, you're like, why would you do that? You have all these other things. You make all this money. You do these other things. And then people go, oh, that guy's worth this much money. Why isn't this happening and that happening? Right. And we have these conversations all the time, but I think it's really important as we go into some of these things. And I think, especially in the market, like right now, a lot of things that a lot of people, there's this nostalgia that's around the Coliseum, right? Which is the, if you're not aware, that's the A's. Drill's well aware, right? Because back in the day, and this is the crazy part now too, is let's set the dynamics of this. If you remember, and if maybe you haven't been old enough or maybe you forgot, is that a lot of these stadiums were multi-purpose back in the day because people didn't have the money to build that many separate arenas or stadiums. And now that is not the case. When they build a stadium, it's for one purpose.
Exactly. And you used to have the football and baseball mixed. And I used to remember when I was growing up watching the Raiders kick field goals from the dirt from the infield. So absolutely. Yeah.
And it was a big thing even now. Let's say, like once a year, they usually do those hockey games inside of certain baseball fields and stuff like that.
Basketball games on the ship.
Yeah. Like now it's an oddity and it's like a nostalgic thing to go and like have these things when that used to be all the time. That's just how it was. Right. And so now this is, some things that we don't even think of as just like, man, and then we often think of owners and we look at people's net worth and go, oh, he's worth $200 million. He's worth $1 billion. He's worth all these other things. And one thing that people forget, because in their world, all of their money is liquid, right? And so, exactly. So liquid means, right, if you're not in the business place, is that I have that money available to me right now. So I have that in my bank account. I'm going to go spend that money, right? That's how most people live their lives. Businessmen do not live their lives that way. And that is not how their net worth is calculated
at all.
So why don't you kind of break that open, Jay? Is like how someone's like network is actually calculated and how their money is diversified.
A lot of the wealthiest and the wealthy that we think about have their wealth in assets, and so could be other corporations. Most of them at this point probably find a lot of trust that they have. A lot of, if you read, I watched a couple of shows. One was about the Lakers. And when what's the owner of those, like Dr. Buss, when he bought the Lakers, he actually needed a loan. Same thing with the guy that purchased the Clippers back in LA. And I believe Al Davis had the same kind of thing going on back then too. But a lot of their money back in that time and currently now, if you follow the wealthiest people, have their money in real estate. And so whether it's assets, real estate, some form, they don't normally have that type of cash on hand. And so if you know somebody that can pull $1 billion out their bank account,
or $1 million.
One, they're probably not very wise. Two, or they're just extremely, extremely wealthy past what people can comprehend. And so when we look at, hey, with the A's, I actually heard this on ESPN the other day. I think it might have been around the horn. They were talking about the A's owners, like he's worth billions of dollars that he came into from, I guess it was his parents' money. And so they're talking about with all this money, why is he still wanting to fill his own pocket? I was like, well, if you think about business and ownership, like that's the goal is to keep, income coming in. And, but I think the knock on that as we go down this road was the reinvestment portion.
Yeah.
How come there wasn't a big reinvestment in what people think about that business?
Yeah.
Say.
Yeah, no. So, like, great point of this, right, is looking into this, and I was looking up some statistics. I got some diversity of ownership of like what that looks like of business owners across the nation there, which I didn't know is like it's actually I was going through minority owners and classified from that side, which is actually pretty interesting. From that side of only 0.1% are native Hawaiians or Pacific Islanders, which again, from Hawaii, that's the other thing. And then 0.4% are Native Americans. And this is entrepreneurship period, right? Just across the board. 9.7% Asian, 2.2% African American, 5.6% Hispanic. So like when we look at that just from across the board, okay, that's just diversity across the board. But we're talking about just, doesn't matter what race or what, how many people are just going to be owners or that. Now, nowadays you hear a lot of like entrepreneurship. Most people in that lens, like it's not that you're opening an LLC. Okay. Now let's say you take that percentage. Let's say it is, I couldn't find it off the top of my head. Taylor, if you come across it or anybody comes across it, like, if they find an exact percentage of how many people are going to be owners of a business ever in their life. Okay, so let's just go with, let's say it's around 5%. I think that's pretty generous. But let's say of all people in the entire world, right, someone that's going to own, something is probably going to be, let's say less than 5%. So then you take from that how many people are that are entrepreneurs that will never have a physical business. So they're not an influencer. They're not I just do these things and I flip it. Not that that's not a business, right? But again, on the same side of that, very different from now you take into that other niche of like a corporations, S Corp, those type of businesses, right? That's a even more finite percentage that's going to be from that side, right? And so because of that, a lot of people are not educated on that level of money, right? So for example, let's say somebody says like, yo, you guys made, let's say we would bring in the casinos because we talk about this all the time. Everybody would look at these casinos on the strip and you would imagine that they're just cashing. They're making so much money. Well, what you're thinking of, right, and this is the business 101 here, is you're thinking of gross income. So gross income is all the money that is just made, right? This is no overhead. And overhead, again, let's go into that definition. That's the money I have to spend to make that money. And we're going to calculate that here in a minute. Exactly. But we're talking about, did you find it, Tay?
Approximately 55% of adults in the United States have started their own business.
Look at them.
But that's probably opening up an LLC.
Yeah, opening, which
takes 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Yes, yes, correct. You can open an LLC. That's what I was going to say earlier too, is opening an LLC, which again, you're technically a business owner, but it doesn't mean that LLC can ever make a dollar.
Yeah, it just, a lot of them don't.
Yeah, and most of the time, also on the other side of that too, is there's a lot of business owners that open up additional LLCs that they never utilize, just in case it turns into another business, or by the time they get into investment, it might never even make it to market. What they were trying to sell, there might be too much overhead, they didn't have enough income, all those other things that come in. Okay, so and then also the statistics just bring up the basics. Or again, 90% of businesses will fail in the first 5 years, 99 in the first 10.
Yeah.
So most businesses are going to fail even if we open them and you are a business owner anyways. And again, a lot of it also comes back to education and understanding how businesses work and how successful businesses work on the other side of it.
Good for America.
Yeah, good for America though. With that, that's a shocker for me that there's even 50% of people that ever file an LLC.
Profitable business.
Yeah, good for that. Yeah, good for them. Okay, so going into that side. Okay. Now, especially but I think that throws up those statistics is the new like entrepreneur nowadays, which is like they could be selling, you're on Amazon seller and again, some people are really making a lot of money doing that, but again, 99% are not. Yeah. And it gets sold. Everybody hears about the 1%, but meanwhile, 99% are just getting, and then again, as soon as that happens, corporations come in and then they, put gasoline on it and then they blow it out,
think
right?
Of all the personal trainers that started their LLCs.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Or for example, you could technically have your own LLC if you're just doing, less lessons, right? You start your own business,
Exactly.
right? And you collect that way and you file that way. Like, okay, great. So again, all of those, we're not necessarily talking about that, but again, there's an education that's deeper than this. And most of those, you're more like an independent contractor than you are actually a business owner at that point of like the level of understanding that you need to have.
Yeah.
But in any case, we say all this because it's really important. Like, let's get back to the casinos. The casinos, for example, let's say that casino was pulling in $1 million a day. You're like, wow, $1 million a day. They are crushing it. They're destroying it. Like, if I could make $1 million, like, oh my goodness, $1 million a day. How are they at it? Like, how could they not be crushing it with money?
But they're
right?
spending what?
Yeah, but that's where it comes into the same side. It's like, now we go into overhead, right? Overhead is a massive problem because they have, if they're making $1 million a day, but they're spending $2 million a day, well, now we got a problem. Now in the net, in the gross, they're making $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
In the net, they're negative
Right.
$1 million, right? Now imagine that. They're losing $1 million a day. No one thinks about that side, right? Yes, they're making $1 million, but they're also losing $1 million.
But that's where the ownership part comes in at.
100%.
I mean, nobody that's in the world of business will look at that and be like, oh, yeah, great, we're making $1 million a day. Oh, great, we're losing $1 million a day too. Like, no.
Yeah.
And that's where, like you're saying, there's a problem. And oftentimes with the problem, there's a decision that needs to be made.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. And then you look at that as well. And then you go, okay, well, you're losing $1 million a day, but everybody loves to post the gross number. You know why everybody loves to post the gross number? Right? And Jarrell and us, because that number's bigger.
Mm-hmm. Always.
That's the big number because that's how much money you're bringing in. But then you have all your overhead, which is why they calculate net.
the highlight reel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the net is how much I'm spending to make, right? That is after all of my expenses, right? How much I'm netting from that exchange. So, okay, let's say I'm making $2 million a day. Okay. The casino's making $2 million a day, but they're spending $1 million a day. Well, then the gross is $2 million. The net is 1, right? So everyone wants to post the gross, even though it doesn't really matter because all that money's going out the door, right? And that's a big deal. And again, a foundational piece that we have to talk about before, we get deeper of understanding those two terms and like what's actually happening. So when we look at that, the big piece that becomes like super important with that is like, okay, so when we look at these business deals and these business owners are making these decisions and they're moving things. So somebody looking at it that doesn't understand, and this is why I want to bring this up because I haven't even talked to you about this, so I want to get your live reaction. Okay. So this is what people have been saying on the internet, all these business entrepreneurs. It makes no sense for the owner to move him from Oakland out to Vegas because it's a smaller market. The biggest market is in right where they are right now. It's a bigger market. Why would you move from there? The owner doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's going to lose more money by coming to Vegas. That is the take that is going on right now, business-wise, is that this owner, who obviously owns quite a few businesses, okay, not just Oakland, right? And disregarding every other team that has also left that area with all of those business owners who also own quite a few businesses, right? That if they're going to move, there's obviously some substantial amount of research that they've gone into some of these things. So before you answer that, Drill, I just want to give you a couple statistics that I screenshotted real quick, since, we're a smaller market and, all these other things happen and this is going to be dumb and they're going to lose a lot of money here. And we have way less people here. So why would you bring your team here? So I'm going to give you a couple of statistics. So the first one, everybody knows the Golden Knights has won Stanley Cup, right? Last year, the 21 to 22 season, they were ranked 6th in attendance in all of the teams across the entire league. They were 6th in attendance.
Small market.
Yeah, small market. Okay. Next one. The AAA team that we have here, we were ranked 1st in all of AAA teams in the entire nation of attendance.
That's actually surprising.
Okay. Number 1 in attendance by over 600,000. Just going to throw that out there. Small market.
Okay.
Also, the total number is almost 14 million. 14 million all-time total. And the ballpark is just opened. Just opened. I think that was, what the year the ballpark opened? 20? Something like that. It's only been a couple years. It's only been open for a couple years.
New.
Okay. So it is the nicest ballpark in all AAA because it is brand new. They put money into it. But this is the other thing. It's not even on the strip.
Nope.
The Knights is.
Yep.
Right. And that's what, so when you look at those statistics, and then now, okay, I know this is a whole nother thing, but if you look at UFC, they have a lot of different arenas, a lot of other places. Okay. Obviously Las Vegas is home, that's home base, right? But the attendance locally
crazy
for Las Vegas for UFC is crazy. Okay. They're also bringing F1 here for no reason. Okay.
the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So you also got Super Bowl. The Raiders came here because they knew it was such a small market, right? That the Raiders also came here and all those things as well. And then they're looking at like, TV deals. This is the other thing. Then someone brought up TV deals and talking about like, the deals they can get in local areas and all that stuff they can pull from that money. And then the funny part that I'm saying with this is like, okay, well then when you look at that, do you know why Vegas has lower TV deals when it comes to sports? Because we don't have many professional sports teams. They're coming here now. We just got professional sports teams. Like, of course, our numbers aren't going to look like those areas. They have multiple professional sports teams, and those deals are put in place based on you having teams.
Exactly.
So throwing that back to you, Jarrell, of business deals of with it. Why don't you kind of maybe dive into the behind the scenes of when the business, and again, this is the thing. We don't operate business on that level. So there's plenty of things that I'm not going to know that they look into before they make a move.
Yeah.
But why don't you go at least the base layer of what most people are not going to even consider when they look at that?
I think a couple of things that looking at kind of the history and going back to just looking at Oakland is that a lot of teams have left and then came back.
Mm-hmm.
So again, not sure why, but also in the trends of, okay, first you had the Raiders, which was one of the first NFL teams ever that went from Oakland to LA to Oakland, and decided, hey, our Raiders games are still sold out, but we're actually not going to be here next year, and picked up their stuff. Mark Davis and them left and came to Vegas. Following that, you also had the Golden State Warriors, who again were in Oakland, and their owner said, I'm not going to go into this topic, but hey, we're going to go across the bridge to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Left Oakland as well. And so if you look at the trends, again, I think there's a want from a fan's perspective for them to be the Oakland A's. And I had the same reaction when the Raiders came to Vegas. But I think what the first thing that people or the ownership would look at is profit and loss.
Yeah.
How much is this move going to cost me? And what's the return or the gain on making this move?
Yeah, but Jarrell, this is the thing though. I'm looking at the numbers, and the guy that owns that company is worth, the A's are worth way more. This guy bought it at, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, I think it was something around, let's say, I think he bought it somewhere around 200 million, something in there, right?
Yeah.
And it's
like
now
worth
worth,
of what it
now it's worth like 1 point something billion dollars, right? So it's like someone looks at that and goes, he's made so much money.
Sure.
Right? He's made so much money. What do you mean? He's obviously making money. So why would he leave? Why would they do that, right? And then
Why do you want a promotion at work?
Yeah. Why do you want a promotion, right? Is not only that it's that, and also too, again, this comes to the foundation conversation that we had about what's liquid and what's not liquid. He owns an asset that is worth that much money. But guess what? First off, it's regulated. It's not an open business. If you're an owner of an MLB team, you can't just go sell your shares or bring in another owner with whoever you want it to be. It's very regulated. Everybody has to be approved. Any owner, again, there's MLB guys that are retired that have been trying to come in and buy teams, and it is a process, and everybody has to approve, because guess what? Owners also have voting rights on what the league does and how they move. So everybody is very selective of who they let inside the ownership group, because they all have a culture of where they want to go and what makes it successful and why it is successful, right? All this stuff, right? And also too, because everybody does have this vote, it's like, man, every time we bring these people in, like these are, again, every time we have the ability, you got to remember, just because something's great, it's very easy to tear it down if you make the bad decisions or go different ways. So ownership, you can't just go and sell it and go, oh, I'm going to go sell and I'm going to make this, 200 million, or I'm going to go do this X, Y, and Z. That asset doesn't sell like that. They have to sell it at a later period in time of what that looks like on that, right? So that's another thing too. The other thing is, I'm going to bring this other aspect into it as well, is that Rob Manfred had a press conference that he did, and they took a one-liner from him and made it sound really bad.
What did he say?
Well, he said, so they had that reverse boycott night that they had. So his statement was, the first one, like two-liner, they're like, hey, did you watch the game from the other night when they all showed up? And he was like, yeah, it was great, to see fans in the stadium and all those other things. But even on the reverse boycott night, right, they had an average crowd that would be like at an average MLB game on a normal day. So to the fans, they thought that was like, that's a success, right? See, we could be here. We could have an average thing. Hold on. First off, we all know from a business standpoint, when a business person's looking at that, this is why, again, it's been organized by people saying, see, we could do this. No. You came and purchased one day, one ticket, and you did it for one time. It's way different. I can't, just because I host one event here in Vegas, right, and I make that amount of money one time, you have to do it for 80 plus. It depends on the schedules, right? You gotta get like, 81 games a year.
Yeah.
That you have to average that attendance. And that's average. That would be in an average, perfect scenario. That would be in an average scenario, right? If you just want to have an average team. Okay. Let's say it was just fan attendance and that was it. We've known not only the team hasn't been good of late, but that the decision to transition a team happened years before people have even considered all these other things that have happened. For a really long time, one of the main, my first opening day that I ever watched was the A's at the Coliseum. That stadium is horrendous. Yeah. And what I mean by that is like the bathrooms are terrible. They're constantly getting backed up where the whole stadium half the time smells like sewer. They literally had, I think it was a raccoon or something that was live in the press box that they couldn't get in one of the rooms. Like it is overran on these. It
was made in the 60s.
It is, again, there's a reason this is an old stadium. Okay. And this is another thing that Rob Manfred said with it. So he made the statement, going back to that question, he said the statement that like it was an average crowd. And when they just took that two-liner and moved on, he's had a whole other statement after that. What he talked about is he said, look, Oakland hasn't even put up a proposal.
Stadium.
There isn't even a proposal. They haven't even considered. There is no proposal. And again, he said that he's like, no baseball team can operate and build a stadium without local support.
Facts.
And they think local support, it's not fans. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about votes, political stuff that's going on, and how much money is being designated from that other end. There is no other owner, right? And when you look at that from investment standpoint, there is no other owner that is operating their facility and their stadium without support from local people. Because you know why that is? And they're like, oh, but he's making all this money. You know who's making more money than the owner? The government. The government is the big dog. We always want to cop them out and say that they're not making any money. The government is the economy in that area, including you as the fan, you're going to make so much more money because there's a stadium there, like we talked about. For example, Allegiant, just right over here. The business across the street from Allegiant, oh my God, that land just skyrocketed. There's businesses over there by Allegiant Stadium for the Raiders that are paying their total overhead for their business with parking spots across the street.
Yep.
So economy-wise, all the money that it brings in, the people that it brings in. For example, again, you being a Raiders fan, you lived in Texas, okay? right? Which that's a whole nother backstory. We won't get the people all that, right? But you guys were you would travel to go and watch a game. So what does that do? You got airfare, you got travel, you got Ubers or rental cars, you got Airbnbs, you got hotels, you got food, all of this stuff. You got people that are getting jobs because of it. So there's an economic impact to you having that stadium that someone invested hundreds of millions of dollars. This doesn't have to do with just sports. That has to do with anything. Like, again, for example, when Elon, when they're in there with SpaceX is somewhere, when Tesla is somewhere, when Amazon is somewhere, when these major businesses, that's why certain states get so upset when a major business leaves, because they're paying so much taxes and also employing so many people that it has a major economic impact on the area. So it becomes massive, right? So when you look at all of that as well, and also too, the fans can yell and everybody can yell all they want, sell the team, sell the team, sell the team, sell the team. This is him being the owner. Because this is the thing too. People think that he just randomly one day was like, I'm going to go to Vegas. No.
It's a business decision.
He brought it up. They've been trying to revamp that facility
for years.
And the city will not.
That's right.
The city will not. And then they wanted to get other land, and the city would not let them have even those land. There was multiple ways that they went around trying to stay in Oakland. The thought of them coming to Vegas has been around for years because, again, more than likely we're available for an expansion team or something like that. They've been talking about that for as well, which means, I don't know, other owners that are MLB people that own a lot of other businesses thought that this was a pretty good market.
Crazy. Not
just the Oakland owner, that doesn't know how to run a business is, deciding of where he's going to go, right? They all thought the same thing. And again, look, and I also get this. I understand that I probably should have said this at the beginning because someone's probably already pissed at me and turned the podcast off, look, I get it. Like, there's teams, if I grew up, which I didn't grow up. Again, this is here in Vegas. I didn't grow up with professional sport teams and all those other things. And I didn't get to go to a lot of those games and all that stuff. I understand that and I would have loved that. There's a deep relationship you build with your team for the nostalgia that it has, all these things that come along with it. But you also got to understand someone paid for you to have that experience. Yes, you paid for the ticket, but somebody fronted $200 million. Someone fronted, those are things like, oh, well, he was born into that money. Okay, his dad's dad. Someone fronted the money and took a chance when the MLB was not what it is now. When someone at some point, when they bought a team for, back in the day, you could have bought the Red Sox probably for $2 million at one point when it first, was established or something like that. It's just, we're in a very different point. Somebody at some point put up a lot of money and made a lot of risk, right? To do that, right? To have that team, right? And on the same side of that, I know that, again, onside, because he's one person and it's so easy to paint him as the villain and all those other things, is in reality, this is the hard part. It's much easier to blame one person than it is to actually see that this is a conglomerate problem with a lot of different reasons of why there has to be another change. That one person has to figure that out with his team, though, but he's got to make a decision of going, okay, we tried all these ways, we tried this way. And then that's why Rob Manfred, he was unpacking all of this. And he said, they haven't even made a proposal. Oakland still hasn't made a proposal. And they, for years, have not allotted that money over to the team. They know that that is not the focus of the political parties of putting money into, especially within California. Let's not even talk about California taxes. So now how much money, for example, why did so many businesses move from California and move to Texas or move to Vegas? We have so many, not only, take all the other businesses. Take the sports team. You know how many California businesses have moved to Las Vegas to the point that we had 96% occupancy on commercial buildings because everybody was moving from California and we were having a hard time looking at buildings because there's so many businesses that were coming over. People were coming over and they were saving so much money in taxes because, if you didn't know, in Nevada, we don't have a state tax. So because we don't have a state tax, think about that. Some of these businesses were saving so much money when they came over here, that they were bidding on buildings and they were offering hundreds of thousands more, all these other things. Again, because they're saving not only, and then also you got how much the property cost. In California, that same house, that same building is worth 3 times as much as the house that it's here, just because of the location. So now the business doesn't care, especially if they're like, let's say you're an Amazon facility.
Yeah.
You think that it matters that you're in California?
No.
Like, no. Like they'll send the stuff out, everything's all good. So again, you take all of those factors in, and it's like, look, all right. And again, usually these bigger businesses negotiate tax breaks with the local economy, which then people weaponize and come back and go, oh, well, of course you're giving corporations breaks. Well, yeah, bro, they're bringing in
Millions.
they can have 100,000 of your businesses, and they're not going to match Amazon.
And they're creating jobs.
And they're creating, again, you could have all those businesses together and Amazon probably still employing more people than your business would be able to employ. And that's the other problem with it as well. It's like, again, when we don't understand the economics from the other side, it's like, yo, again, on the same side of that, it's like, so what, again, so most people's take is, well, he should just operate with a lower caliber, he should just make we don't even know from the other side of that too, from that, okay? If you want them to hold on to, and I'm gonna go baseball for a second for you. Let's think about it as assets. If you want him, let's say you have this asset. This is the problem, is you have an asset with a contract. So what happens is in baseball, let's say you have a really good player, right? And you know this from other sports, but from business sense, you have an asset. But the problem is usually I can just hold on to my asset. If I develop an asset, I can just hold on to it, and then that's the point. And then it makes a whole bunch of money, and then I sell it. The problem is you can't do that in MLB, because now that guy becomes a free agent and other people get the bid to take your asset that you developed. So when the A's, because then I had this other super fan that jumps on there, it's like, when you let go of Giambi and you let go of Josh Donaldson and you let go, and he just starts going through all of these amazing pros that have played at the Coliseum and for the A's, right? Yes. The problem is guess what? Those other teams that made better deals and made more money can offer the player more money. So he's leaving because they have more capital to build the business, because they've been getting beat up and they don't have the same money that they can offer compared to the New York Yankees, compared to the Red Sox, compared to all these other people, because they have better deals in place and they are making more money. So when you say, oh, he can just make less money and keep the team here, what you're doing is you look at the trend, that team's just going to keep going down and down and down, because he cannot compete against other owners. And that is that. So when you look at Moneyball, which me and you watch together, then we go into this. So when you look at Moneyball and he goes into the office and he says, I need more money. The guy's like, there is no more money.
I ain't got no more.
There's no more money this is what we have to spend. This is our budget. There is no more money, right? Because again, I can't just go sell the team. Even if he does, okay, look, this other part that people don't understand. If he goes and sells the team, the next guy's gonna have the same problems.
Same exact problem.
Because
he has crap ton.
Yeah, unless he got capital from somewhere else. Unless he has capital from somewhere else. The
problem is money.
Yeah, so that they can do all that. Like, that's the point. Yeah, so we call those market conditions. Okay, and also now, like you said, this happens a lot in business. If somebody else says, man, I could buy that asset and I could do it, you know what that other owner's probably going to do if he comes in? Move it. Probably take that asset, buy it from him, that $1.2 billion business that he owns, and take it to Vegas and make it a $3 billion business. That's what he's going to do with it. And so, again, if the new owner comes in, people think, oh, sell the team and then they're going to stay here. The new owner's going to want to do the same thing. He's going to want to take it and make more money, rather than the business be a trend down. And when you say, how can the business be trending down when the asset is worth way more money? Well, first off, you have inflation. Okay, so some of that money of what it's worth, it's just like your house.
Yeah.
It's the same house. And again, for example, back in the day, a cheeseburger was 16 cents. Okay, it is no longer 16 cents, right? There is cost, and all the cost goes up everywhere. So again, yes, I'm selling it for $4, but I'm also now, instead of having to buy it for 1 cent, I'm having to buy it for $4 or whatever, right? It goes up, right? Cost of goods goes up. That's how the market works. It always goes up. Now, what creates a profitable business compared to the rest of the economy is how much are we up compared to the market. If inflation is 15% and we had an increase in profit of 15%, we're right where we were because everybody went up. The whole market went up, right? So that has nothing to do with us as a business. We need to operate above that. Now, if the market went up 3% and we went up 15, okay, well, that's a pretty big growth for us. That also works the opposite way. If the whole market is down 30% and we went down 30%, well, we're right on par with the rest of the market. But if the whole market went down 30% and we only went down 5%, well, we're in a pretty good spot. So that becomes huge from there. So that's the other thing that people don't understand from the business standpoint. And then the other thing, and I know that you just moved here too, but I know that you gotten to experience some of these games and these other things too as well, is people don't consider the difference between the markets as well. Is like, well, why do we have so much attendance and why is it so important? Why are the A's looking to be on the strip? Why aren't they off the strip like some of these other, because it's easier to find land off the strip, obviously, right? So why would they buy out a casino? And people are like, he's gonna have to spend all that money to buy a casino, to do all these other things. Well, again, there must be a benefit to that, right? So why don't you explain that side of it too, of why they would be willing to spend so much money to knock down a casino and build on that land comparatively to build offsite?
It goes back to kind of the basics and the principles. Is like when you purchase an asset, you want it to grow. And when you look at growth here, and I'm going to use this from going to a few Raiders games, you look at the strip and the attraction is not just the casinos, but or the nightlife, but now you're adding sports to the strip, right? So you have T-Mobile Arena, you have Allegiant, and now putting the baseball stadium
and F1,
and F1, right? What you see is fans now. So it's twofold. The city of Vegas grows, and the team experiences growth too, right? And so not only that, but obviously because Vegas is Vegas, you have people every single day flying across the world.
Yeah, not just weekends,
not just
every
day.
Every day is a Saturday.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Flying across, and not just domestic, but across the world. It's an international attraction.
Yeah.
And so now you'll have people experiencing Vegas in a whole different way from the sports sides of getting to go to A's games, Raiders games, Knights games, the Aces games, whatever the case may be. But now the pool of attraction is not just local fans. You're now pulling from the entire world when you come to Vegas. And that just, when you look at your business, your stadium's never going to be empty. So they just solved a problem that they had locally immediately just with the move. And again, it's going to cost you anything to do something. But on top of that, again, if you're taking a place and you're going to spend a bunch of money, if you're going to spend a bunch of money on an asset, you expect a large return at some point. And so when you look at that, it's kind of the perfect setup for the sports teams that chosen to go on the strip, because you've just increased your attendance probably from a local market to international market. I don't even know what that X would be, but pretty big.
Which again, this would be part of the market research. So what he would do is they have a team, an asset team that goes in and they go to look at these other spaces. Then also too, just so you guys know as well, he can't just pick whatever town he wants. The MLB has to approve that as well. So what they did is they actually, right now, they have the owner of another team who is flying out, they're going to get presented all this information about the economics and what's happening in the area. Is this a good location? Because this is the other thing. What would happen if when a team does plummet and fail, it hurts the entire league. So they don't want teams to be hurting either. They don't want owners to be hurting in that way either. They don't want their money tied up. They don't want one team to be really bad. Because again, remember this, it's not that, again, on the same side of that, as we go to look at like money-wise, again, it's like, oh, well, this is $1 billion business. Why doesn't he just, do all this to pay all these players and X, Y, and Z? Again, it's not liquid. He can't just sell it. So again, we're going back to the same issues over and over again, which is, again, why his stuff is tied up. So then he's got to go make money in other businesses. Well, now he's taking money from his other businesses to try to help out this other business, because the cost of doing business in this other market is so expensive. Think about it. How many other businesses do you have multiple players, or in this way it's players, but assets? You have multiple assets that every single years, which are really a lot of times operating from expenses, especially at certain years when they're got hurt. Like most teams, they pay these guys, they get hurt, they don't perform, they don't do all these other things. So you got to take all of those risks too, right? So then you take that on top of it, and you got to sign all these guys, you got to spend all this money, you got blah, 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 all these other things that come in. Okay, so what other business are you operating in where you have to spend maybe 4 guys that are 20 million a piece, 16 million a piece, 14 million a piece?
Expensive payroll.
Expensive payroll, right? That you have to front on top of all that. Now, and that's a
but that's the
humongous
thing
piece.
is when people look at these sports teams, we see again the highlight reel.
Yeah.
We think they're making a lot of money. We think they have a lot of coming in because they're on sports teams, they're on TV.
Yeah.
They have all these professional athletes.
Yeah.
They have a owner worth billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But in the background, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah. Or even if you look at someone like, for example, like Facebook. Go look at Facebook, right? Meta now.
Mm-hmm.
You know how much it costs to innovate something on that global of a scale? Like, you know how much it cost probably Apple to innovate their new, Vision Pros or whatever that is?
Spent just for the prototype of it.
Yeah, all the thing. And then you have to be able to mass scale it. Then you have to open up factories. You have to do all these other, that money's got to come from somewhere. And again, sure, you can be like, oh, I'm going to make that money down the road, but it don't come from nowhere. How do you think they get the money? They have to show. And then also everybody's got to get returns. No one's just investing money because it's also not coming from one owner. So now you also too are risking on these other businesses. And this other thing, people think, oh, well, he owns these other businesses. Well, guess what? He's got business partners in those other businesses. So guess what? He's only getting a cut of his other businesses too. And those other business owners are going to say, hey, we also have a contract that says we have a reinvestment of this much of our returns.
Yep.
So he can't take all of his returns and just bring it over to another business. When that, again, what we would look at that as like, man, that other business is a really high cost and making money from that. Most of the owners too that make money from owning sports teams, most of the times it's more like a trophy to them to have like a sports
they're
team.
done with their career or whatever they're working on.
Yeah, it's just another thing that they own. They like to say that they own part of the Knicks or they own part of this or whatever, right? But most of the people that when you make your money off the team, a lot of times those guys are investing for years and years and years without the return, right? Because then they have to reinvest the money that they are making. They're putting it back into the team to, again, continue to build the asset, reinvest. And then they get their payout years later when they finally sell the team or when they get it to a certain point where they don't need to reinvest as much. Like, again, if you're the Yankees or something like that, right? First off, operating the Yankees is not a cheap thing to do because you are the Yankees. You have, again, that it's known across sports. It's just like, the same thing. Like, I'm gonna hurt your feelings for a second, but like the Cowboys, like it's an expensive team to run.
Yeah.
Right. But also makes a lot of money. But he had to invest a lot of money
build that brand
every year. Reinvestment, protecting the brand, all those other things. Every time they put something out, the Cowboys, if they put something out, it's got to be at top because that's what's expected.
Yep.
The Yankees got to be top. It's what's expected, right? If you're the Lakers, it's what's expected, right? It's got to be this top premier. The Red Sox right now are getting hammered right now because they are in last place in the AL East, even though they're a 500 team, which in baseball is I think there's like 2 or 3 other divisions there's like 2 divisions that they would be in first place and another division they'd be in like second or something like that, right? With the same record that they have right now, they're just playing in a conference that is
tough.
Yeah, just really tough. And so at the end of the day, people look at that and go, well, we have more money than the Rays or the Orioles or whoever these things are. Okay, so this is the other thing. People always forget about this. The Orioles owner is one of the richest owners in all the MLB from other things.
Mm-hmm.
And he reinvests way less. You know the top, I looked this up one time. You know the top reinvestor in all of sports? The Yankees. The Yankees put the most amount of money back into their team than any other team. But that's why they're the Yankees, right? But on the same side of that, they also have the ability to do that. Other people, and then now this is the other thing. Let's say that owner who owns those other 20 businesses, let's say one of his other businesses, because it's not every business going up, everything's trending here, everything's perfect from all those things. He's got to cover his other businesses too. And maybe this other business is requiring a $40 million upgrade to get to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Well, again, we got to look at the totality of all of that. Now, when you look at that as a fan, they're just going, yeah, but I want to watch a A's game. It's like, bro, well, come on, dog.
Cool.
Like, bro, you've been to 2 games. You've been to 2 games. And also, too, look, this is going to really piss the A's fans off. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this too.
Oops.
Okay. If you're a real fan, you show up when they suck. I don't care.
A Raiders game.
If you're a real fan, you show up when they're not good.
Sadly.
Right? Like, for example, I'm going to throw this in here. The Cowboys ain't been good for a while.
They've just been average.
Right? But that's what I mean. Okay, yeah, not bottom tier. I'll give them that. They haven't been bottom tier. But on the same note of that, right? What do you think it would take? Like, how long would it take? I'm not saying that Cowboys fans are elite. My point is that if you're only showing up when they're winning Super Bowls, like, because this is the thing. This is the thing. People are talking smack about the A's like they're awful, awful. You know how many years the A's have made playoffs? You know how good that team is? That's why they made the movie. Because they were that good. They were doing all those things. So of recent, they haven't, but you know why they haven't been a good recent? Because my man's preparing to move the team. He's taking that money that he would be paying on players, and he's taking it and he's withholding it so that he could buy the casino, so that he could go and do these other things. And then people are like, this has already been in motion.
Years.
When he has been putting enough in where they were making it to playoffs and doing all those other things. So they were good. So again, you take all those things together. The city, even then, when they were good and they were doing all those things, still we're not going to reinvest. So you guys, and then again, it's so much harder to get, from a psychology's perspective, it's so much harder to get upset with the city of Oakland because there's not one entity. There's not one person. There's not a face where I can go, it's his fault. The owner, easy cop out. Oh, that guy needs to sell the team.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's just like on the same side of that. Like, do you think, and people don't understand that too from an ownership perspective, do you think that my man that is worth, he has one of his businesses is worth over $1 billion? First off, you know how many people are going to own a business that's worth $1 billion? One of his businesses is worth over $1 billion. Do you think that he doesn't have the ear, or he can't get help from anybody in the world that he wants? You think that he doesn't have the phone call that he can call any other owner in the whole MLB and talk to them about his situation? He's getting the best advice. You think he's just on a whim? Just, you know what? I'm going to move to Vegas, and, these people aren't listening to me, and, and it's been tough. It's just like, people just like don't consider on the same side of that. Like, you, who's never owned a business, who started, you've been training people or whatever, and you somehow have the arrogance to think that you know more business than the guy that owns one of his businesses is worth $1 billion. And you know more about what he should do with the team? I rest my case. I rest my case. Go ahead, Jay. Sorry,
I just think that a lot of people have to come from a fan's POV, and that's the perspective that they have. But if they were to sit there and just think about the problems that could be happening, it makes sense. I always compare it to the Raiders leaving Oakland and coming to Vegas. And, as a fan, I'm like, oh, the emotional ties and, calling them the Oakland Raiders. But at the end of the day, it's like, the same thing about the stadium. It's like, you're not going to redo the stadium. There's been no renovations. You got the football team playing on the baseball field. The stadium's crap. Attendance is attendance. It's not terrible, but it's also not great. They're not pulling the numbers that they are now. It's you have to look at from an opportunistic standpoint versus, I want my Oakland A's to be in Oakland, and I'm not going to come to the game still. Know.
And the last part I was going to say with that too, when I said the statement earlier about, and again they'll get pulling out of context, but when I said the statement earlier about like the fans showing up even when you suck, when I'm talking about fan attendance, it's embarrassing that our AAA team pulls more seats than the major league team. How are we training guys here locally with the Aviators, and they're playing in front of more fans than when they go up to the MLB?
That's the
Come on. It's ridiculous. And then people going, oh, well, I'm not showing up because I'm mad at the owner. Okay, so yeah, that's going to make him want to stay. Yeah, that will do it. Like, people don't understand that too. Like, he has the choice, they have the choice to operate their business anywhere they would like to do it. And if somebody else, if you're being on the same side of that, okay, let's say this. Let's say you have a relationship with somebody and they're not treating you well. You have the ability to be with somebody else. You can leave, you can go be with somebody else. And if you don't value them, it doesn't mean that someone else doesn't value them.
Exactly.
And so when he can go, skip one state over and be extremely valued and make way more money, right? And then be able to build something that is a championship quality team because he has so much money that is coming in from the fan base, from the city, from the support system, from all those other things. That's the reason for him owning the team in the first place. And maybe that's why you don't own the team, nor are the GM, nor are the assistant GM, nor are the entire everybody that's together that is doing everything they can to win these games. And again, when they're going to ownership saying, we need more money, and he's like, yeah, and then people think about that, the owner's saying, we need more money. I need more money so that I can go and build this. And these are the things that are holding me back from making more money in this market. And then because I know other owners and other markets, I'm aware of all the other ways that I could make this money that my local community of support system is not willing to do. And then I have one state over that is willing to do that. And they're bringing all these other sports. Yeah. The Knights coming here and being as successful as they are played a major factor. The Raiders coming here, it played a major factor. F1 coming here played a major factor. All of these things, we're becoming the sports capital of the world. Mm-hmm. People don't understand that. It's like these things are in place. These things are moving. They're supposed to have an expansion team of the NBA here at some point. WNBA team just won everything also too as well. You take all that in, okay, that is all the environment that was been stewing, right? Of why they're going to transition. And people are going to be butthurt about it. And people are going to say, but my team and I grew up and this and that. But at the end of the day, he's actually being a good owner. Mm-hmm. Because the big, and look, if you want to be a good owner, you got to be willing to be criticized. Yep. It is what it is. When that team 50 years from now is one of the highest producing teams and he did whatever, then everybody's going to look back and be like, man, that was one of the smartest moves he could have done is moved it from Oakland. But right now, everybody's going to be pissed at him. So, I don't know you, homie, but you know what I'm saying? Hats off. I understand what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Big move. I understand this much of what you're doing, but it makes sense. You need this stuff. So I think that's the big part. But yeah, that's all I got.
That's it.
Cool. All right. Let me pray us out. Let me get out of here. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for just allowing us, God, to just see some different perspectives and just open our hearts to different ways and remind us, especially me, Lord, to be empathetic to people's emotions and how they feel and the nostalgias and the relationships that they've built with their teams and just other people in their lives, God, but also to open us up to new opportunity, understand that you are a God of abundance and there's much more for us and there's more for us to, more relationships for us to have. You have more dreams for us. There's more hope for us and there's more things that you're doing. You are the rebuilder, you're the carpenter, and we just pray that you continue to do what you do, God. And we say all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, until next time, Farm System out.